Welcome to Zeph's house. Come in out of the dark and pull the door shut behind you. Tonight's tale is called Open Ground. There's a stretch of county road in just south of Bray, where my county keeps everything that matters in one place. The hospital, the nursing home, the county jail and the Huber dorm, public works, and Lakeland school. Everything full of people who bleed around the clock or can't leave or are too small to know better than to run barefoot in the grass. I'd driven past that complex 10,000 times and never once thought of it as a target. The night I started thinking of it that way was the night man sealed the wrong ground on Bray Road, and the wrong ground went looking for another door. Klein's crew started that Monday. Caldwell couldn't stop it. The permits were signed, the liability math was done, and his project hit every box that makes a county comfortable. Drainage, sightlines, safety. Clean words for clean work. I watched from my truck with a thermos, which in that part of Wisconsin makes a man practically invisible. The first thing I noticed was his lines. Construction stakes are usually generous. You mark wide, you dig conservative, you adjust on the fly. Klein's lines were exact, not approximate, like he already knew where the edges of the bad ground were before any survey told him. The backhoe's first 3 scoops came up honest. Tan clay, gravel, road base. On the 4th, the color changed. Not dramatically, kind of shift you'd call rich if you were a landscaper. But after the coyote, after the backyards, it looked to me like a bruise being uncovered. And Klein's hand was up before the bucket cleared the trench. Hold. He looked into it the way a surgeon looks at a cut that's gone deeper than planned. Then he said, calm as weather, "We're going to cap this. Clean fill and fabric. Mark it off." His operator said, "We just opened it." Klein said the drainage was wrong. He didn't want standing water rotting the base. Textbook, reasonable. Except he hadn't tested the drainage. He looked at the color and made the call. I wrote that down. While the dark layer sat open, a worker named Prout caught his forearm on a piece of rusted hardware sticking out of the bank. Just a scrape, the kind you wipe on your jeans and forget. I saw it from 50 feet. And I saw Klein 30 feet away with his back turned come up out of his grade sheet the instant Prout's blood hit the air, like something had pulled a wire in his spine. He didn't run, but he walked over with a speed that didn't match his easy voice, and he got the man off the trench edge, and he cleaned that scrape with alcohol wipes he handled like they mattered more than a scrape should. "You've done this before," I said. "I've been on enough sites. You knew where the soil changed before you dug." And Klein looked at me, no twitch, no tell, and said, "Some ground tells you what it is if you've been around enough of it." Then he went back to his crew. And what left me cold wasn't what he'd said, it was what he hadn't asked. A stranger tells you the sheriff has you under watch, and you don't ask why or what they're looking for. He just accepted it, like he'd been expecting me for a long time. By noon, the dark section was capped. Fabric down, clean fill, compacted smooth, fast and rehearsed, like a man dressing a wound he'd dressed before. That night we watched the feeds. The capped ground showed up lighter on infrared like a bandage over something still deciding whether to bleed through. At 11:41, the possum came out. The watcher, same slow ritual. The crickets cut clean. The grass bent in its heavy line. The wet strike came and the possum dropped into its practiced death and waited. But when it lifted its head this time, it didn't go back to the culvert. It went to the cap. Every other night it had stopped short of the bad ground, sat near it, never crossed. Now it stepped up onto Klein's fresh fill and walked it, back and forth, head low, nose working, slow and methodical. Larson said it was sniffing for grubs. It wasn't. Possums wander. They follow their nose in loops. This was a grid, a patrol. It paused dead center, held for 30 seconds over one spot, then turned and went home. And I understood, and I hated understanding it. It hadn't been inspecting the construction. It had been inspecting the containment. And it had stopped exactly where the crew transitioned from double fabric to single, the thinnest point. The possum knew what was under there, and it knew what was supposed to hold it down. Gage called at 12:20. The Ford was out again, same muddy plate, same perfect driving, but not west tonight, south, down County NN, toward the complex. He lost it near the health center when it killed its lights on the access road, and 40 minutes later it came back north. I called Caldwell, and I asked her what sat south on NN, even though we both knew. She didn't answer like someone recalling a fact. She answered like someone reading a diagnosis. Medical Center, Aurora Lakeland, the nursing home, Lakeland School. A pause. The jail, the Huber dorm, Public Works. Another. And us. My building. Klein had capped the west edge. The dirt couldn't push toward the developments anymore, so it pivoted toward the one place in the county with the most broken skin per acre. A hospital bleeds around the clock. A jail is full of people who can't leave. A school is 100 children who fall down 5 days a week. We checked the complex at dawn before anyone was on site. The school came up clean. But along the west wall of the sheriff's own building, the mulch bed had been refreshed, darker, damper, fresher than any county maintenance schedule would explain. And underneath it, against the foundation, the soil was wrong. The same dark, dense color I'd seen in the trench, in the backyards, packed into a dead coyote's paws on Bray Road. Caldwell went very still. Not as a sheriff. As a woman standing on her own ground, realizing it wasn't hers anymore. "He was here," she whispered. "The truck was at my building." Then she told Larson to glove up and check every bed and tree and pile in the complex, and not to bleed anywhere near any of it, an instruction that had nothing to do with procedure and everything to do with what she'd learned standing on Bray Road at night. He didn't ask why. He was learning. Caldwell did the one logical thing left. She sent a sample to a soil lab. The envelope sat on her desk 2 hours before she opened it. Larson brought coffee none of us drank. She read it twice and slid it to me like it was evidence against her. Mineral content, organic matter, microbial profile, heavy nettles, pH, all of it within expected ranges for southeastern Wisconsin farm soil. Slightly elevated organic content, consistent with historically composted field margins. A mineral signature, they called, and I quote, "regionally typical." "It's dirt," Larson said from the doorway, with the relief of a man who wanted to be told the world made sense. And that was the moment I understood what we were up against. The wrong ground didn't look wrong under a microscope. It didn't register on a spectrometer. It didn't announce itself in any language science speaks. It only showed itself in behavior, in what happened when blood met dirt and the night got involved. And no lab in Wisconsin tests for that. Normal is the most dangerous word in the language. Normal doesn't get you a warrant. Normal doesn't stop a man in a Ford from delivering fill to every new lot in the county. Klein finished on Bray that afternoon. I watched him stand at the edge of his completed work with his hands in his pockets, looking at it the way you look at a lock you've just set, testing it with your eyes before you trust it with your back turned. Then he drove off without a wave. There was a mason jar on my truck seat, quart size, the kind in every kitchen in the county. Inside, dark soil, dense and damp, pressed against the glass like it was trying to see out. No note, no label. Nobody else had been near my truck. I drove home with it on the passenger seat, and for 20 minutes on dark county roads, I had the unshakable feeling that the jar was the most alive thing in the cab. I found Klein the next day, parked alone on Bray, standing on his fresh gravel, looking south. I told him he'd left something in my truck. He didn't play dumb. "What did you see?" he asked. "Dirt, the same dirt the lab says is normal." "Normal," he repeated, like a joke somebody told him once that he never found funny. And then he asked me if I'd noticed how some animals know where the bad ground is before people do. Possums, he said, are old, older than most things that walk around here. They know what dirt is safe and what dirt isn't. And when he looked at me then, full on, what I saw wasn't the calm of a crew lead. It was exhaustion, the deep kind, the kind you get carrying something alone too long. "Pay attention to what stays near the bad ground without getting sick," he said. "That's the thing that knows the difference." He got in his truck. Before he pulled away, he rolled down the window. "Dale, don't bring a flashlight." And I understood. A flashlight was what the other one carried. The man with the beam who knew where the cameras were, who moved through the dark with confidence. Klein was telling me to be the opposite of that, to be quiet, to be the thing that stays. I parked at the culvert at 11:30 with my lights off, my phone locked in the glove box, no flashlight. I let my eyes find the dark, the road a gray line, the fence posts like teeth, the ditch a low shadow. I walked the shoulder slow, the way you move when you're not trying to get somewhere, just trying to be somewhere without startling what's already there. And I sat down on the gravel 10 feet from the culvert mouth. Not a crouch, not tactical. I just sat, the way you sit on a dock when the fish can already see you and you've decided being honest beats being sneaky. The crickets stayed steady. That was good. Steady crickets meant the big thing hadn't come yet. At a few minutes to midnight, the watcher came out of the culvert. On a screen, it had always looked like evidence. In person, it was just a possum. Pale, pointed, the slow, arthritic gait of something built for survival and not for speed. It started along the ditch toward the seam, the way it always did. And halfway there, it stopped. It turned its head and looked at me. I'd watched this animal for weeks on a monitor. I'd never felt it look at me. It didn't run, it didn't flatten, it did none of the things a possum is supposed to do when a man is sitting 10 feet away in the dark. It just held my eyes. That old moment from when you're a boy, when a wild thing holds your gaze and the contract between species dissolves and there's just two kinds of alive sharing a night. Then he climbed the slope toward me. He crested the shoulder and sat down about 4 feet from my boots, patient and watchful. The posture of something that had been doing this longer than I'd been alive. I didn't reach for it. I didn't speak. I sat with my hands on my knees and let the quiet be full. Then the crickets stopped. A clean cut, like a lid closing on the sound. The watcher dropped flat, the practice collapse. Except this close I could see it wasn't feigning, and it wasn't panic. It was a choice, hiding in the only way that worked. I should have run. I should have walked to my truck and told Caldwell I'd seen a possum and nothing else. But Klein had said don't bring a flashlight, and I finally understood what he'd really meant. Don't bring your human instincts. Be the thing that stays. Far down the ditch, a deer blew out of the field, that frantic 4-beat gallop you only hear when whatever's behind an animal is worse than anything ahead of it. Hooves tearing wet ground, stumbling, recovering, and behind it, deeper, heavier, a second sound, not hooves, not footsteps, something that covered ground without panic and without hurry. Something that moved the way water moves downhill. Inevitable. The deer passed me in the dark. I couldn't see it. I felt it. The displaced air, the spray of ditch water, the terror so thick it had a taste. And then the sound I'll carry to my grave. One heavy strike, not a thud, a single exact thing, and the gallop folded into it all at once, every part of the animal stopping in the same instant. No second blow, no struggle, nothing wasted. Then a beat of silence and a slow, deliberate dragging. Something heavy pulled deeper into the field, away from where anyone would find it, by something that didn't need to hurry because the work was already done. The guardian was cleaning up. The crickets came back, one at a time, the way musicians return to a stage after someone important has left the room. The watcher lifted its head in those careful increments, and then it looked at me one more time, and in that look was something I'd never seen in an animal. Not intelligence, that's too clean a word. Not instinct, that's too small. Recognition. The look of a thing that had been waiting a very long time for someone to sit still long enough to understand. Then it climbed down, crossed the ditch, and went into the culvert without looking back, the way it always did. Except tonight, it had come to me first. I sat there a long while, and I stopped feeling like a man stumbling through a mystery, and started feeling like a man being recruited into a war that had been running longer than anyone alive could remember. Because it was a system, old and quiet, running on rules nobody had written down because the things that knew the rules don't speak. The ground spreads, the guardian contains it, the watcher endures and remembers. And a man in an old Ford was breaking all three. The only part I couldn't see yet was which side the watcher was on. Only that, out of everything alive on Bray Road, it had chosen me to find out. That's all for tonight. If this one stayed with you, leave a like and subscribe. There's a new strange tale every week. Sleep well, if you can.